What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker, and welcome back to Axis and Allies 1951 Europe, turn 9. Alright, we are now into October of 1951. Our random event was quite the doozy. American long-range bombers made it to Moscow and delivered an atom bomb. And so over here, Moscow was nuked. Oh, they also lost 10 IPC because of that. Moscow was nuked. There were no ground units there, but a 1 was rolled, so the factory took the full damage from the atomic weapon. So the first European capital has been hit with a nuclear weapon. Technically, the airbase in the territory of London was hit too, but the city of London itself had actually escaped actual nuclear destruction. Initiative. The initiative roll this turn was a comedy of errors. So on the first roll of the 3 dice, the Soviets rolled a 2, and the US and NATO rolled 1s. Again, couldn't believe how lucky the Soviets got on that roll. And then in the subsequent roll, the US won out against NATO. Alright, so starting off, the Soviets had 85 to spend. However, they had 95. They started out with 95, but then they had to minus 10 for the nuke against Moscow. So because of that, they bought 3 infantry in Smolensk, 3 infantry in Kiev. They put 2 tanks in Hungary. They put an infantry, a self-propelled gun, and a tank in Warsaw. They did 2 mech and a self-propelled gun, or in a Katyusha in the Caucasus. And then they repaired the initial damage on the factory here in Istanbul. Oh, and then also they put an infantry up here in Leningrad. Combat. Alright, combat. The Soviets launched 2 major attacks. First, they combined as much of their forces as possible, ground and air, and they initially attacked into Turin. They ended up wiping out 1 NATO infantry, 6 U.S. infantry, 3 of which were flagged as the 1st Infantry Division, and unfortunately the long-standing 89th Infantry Division was also destroyed. The U.S. also lost a tactical bomber and a fighter, while the Soviets only lost 2 self-propelled guns. Let's see here. Yep. So the NATO defense rolls initially for Turin were not good ones. All right, and then for their next attack, the Soviets tried to knock out the U.S. forces here in Cairo. However, that was not successful. The Soviets only killed 1 mechanized infantry regiment from the 80. What was it? They killed 1 mechanized infantry regiment from. Oh, what unit was that? Oh, from the 83rd Infantry Division, and then the Soviets lost 2 infantry and then retreated back into Transjordan with 3 infantry and 3 artillery. Non-combats. The Soviets moved these forces from Istanbul back to here. They brought their airborne down from Smolensk. They consolidated most of their air power here in the southern Balkans area. And try to see here, yeah. No, that was it. That was pretty much all they did for non-combats. So then at the end of the turn, the Soviets collected, what'd they collect? Did I not write that down? Oh, sorry. They collected 91 IPC altogether. All right, next was the U.S. So for this turn, the U.S. had 64 to spend. They bought 2 mech infantry flagged as the 28th Infantry Division. They bought 2 self-propelled guns, 2 tanks flagged as the 7th Infantry, and then there's supposed to be 4 infantry on there. 1 second. So there's supposed to be 4 regular infantry on there. 2 of them flagged under the 36th Infantry Division, and the other 2 being flagged under the 92nd Infantry Division. And then they also bought a transport. Combat. So the Americans decided to take a different approach this turn for combat. So what they did was they mobilized their air forces here in Rome, along with the carriers and support ships, came down here, took the 1 mech and 2 tanks off of Cairo, and did a amphibious invasion here of Transjordan. The offshore bombardment killed 2 of the 3 infantry. And then in the combat, the Soviets lost the remaining infantry and the 3 artillery, while the U.S. lost the remaining mechanized infantry of the 83rd Division, and then lost one tank from the 4th Armored Division, and also lost a fighter. Next, the U.S. launched a spoiling attack from Marseille with the 2 infantry of the 31st Infantry Division and the 2 armor of the 2nd Armored Division. They went into Turin against the 10 Soviet tanks that were sitting in here. They did manage to kill 2 of the tanks, but unfortunately the entire American force was wiped out. Next, the U.S. took their B-29 from Rome, came over here into the Caucasus, and bombed the factory. They survived the AAA, but unfortunately only rolled snake eyes for 2 damage on the factory in the Caucasus. And then the B-47, which was originally in Paris, came over here to Istanbul, bombed the factory. It survived the AAA and managed to damage the factory for 5. Alright, so then on the non-combat, the U.S. used their 4 Sea Lift to move the 2 mechs of the 30th Infantry Division and the 2 armor from the 11th. They used their airlift capability to airlift the 2 units, the 2 infantry for the 104th Infantry Division, and brought them all into Cairo. The U.S. moved their 2 transport aircraft from the queue over here to Berlin. And then on the 2 transports that were at the build queue, the U.S. loaded up the 2 infantry of the 97th Infantry and the 2 armor from the 10th. Brought them over to C-Zone 8 and then just offloaded them here in Tunisia just to play it safe. Alright, and then at the end of the turn, the U.S. collected 68 IPC. NATO. We'll just go right here. I'll have to fix that in a minute. Alright, so NATO had 79 IPC to spend. They bought a mech and 2 tanks here in Rome. Whoops. Alright, I'm going to try and fix that right now. So a mech and 2 tanks in Rome. They did their standard build in Paris again with 2 mech, 2 self-propelled guns, and 2 tanks. They put 2 airborne here in London, and then put an infantry here in Holland. Combat.
She's fine.
Yep. Ugh. Alright, where was I? Combat this turn. All right, so first off, NATO moved all their forces from West Germany and attacked into Stettin. The Soviets only had an infantry and artillery defending it. They got swept aside at the loss of 1 NATO infantry. Then the NATO gathered up as much of its might as possible from so they had the 2 mech and tank from Rome, the 2 mech, 2 self-propelled guns, 2 tanks from Paris, and then they also had the 2 bombers that were in Reims, and they attacked the 8 Soviet tanks that were here in Turin. Overall, they did manage to kill all the tanks and suffered the loss of 4 mechanized infantry and 1 self-propelled gun. So, NATO was able to reclaim northern Italy, but it was a costly, well, not entirely costly, but I mean it was costly enough for them. Okay, then NATO finally was able to gather its force for the liberation of Oslo. They went in to an amphibious assault with 2 infantry, a self-propelled gun, and a tank. The Soviets had 2 infantry and 2 artillery defending the territory. The NATO did have an offshore bombardment with 3 cruisers and 2 battleships, and the offshore bombardment managed to hit the 2 infantry. And then on the attack, NATO was able to kill the 2 remaining artillery and only lost 1 infantry. So the liberation of Norway is now at hand. Non-combat, not much for the non-combat for NATO this turn. Let's see here. Why am I missing? Why does it look like I'm missing something here? I am. Hold on, let me look at my army. No. I'm missing something here. Wait a minute. That's what I'm missing. I had 2 fighters up here in West Germany that came down here. Where did they... Did I accidentally pull them off as casualties? I think I did. Well, that's not right. Okay. So I will have to replace those. So NATO had 2 fighters that... Oh, no, never mind. There they are. God. Camera was blocking them. Sorry. Alright, so they moved some of their aircraft. They moved their 2 fighters that supported the Turin fight back here into Rome. The B-47 and my camera were hiding them. They moved their bombers back to Reims. They pushed the Army of the Rhine forward into Breslau, forming up a small little army group of 2 infantry, 4 mech, and 5 tanks. They moved this infantry down, and then they moved this infantry down from Denmark into West Germany. And actually, what am I doing? I made another mistake. Transjordan is not supposed to be an American territory. Transjordan is actually supposed to go back to NATO because NATO controlled it. So actually, I have to fix that now. So you go back. So the US goes down 1, NATO goes up 1, and the US transfers 1 IPC from their block to the NATO block. Okay. So hold on. Alright, so that was all NATO pretty much did to reinforce. And then at the end of the turn, they collected 83. Right? Well, they saved 1 IPC, collected 82, which would have been 83. But because I made that mistake with Transjordan, they actually collect 84. Alright, well, that is it for turn 9. And the game is progressing. It'll be interesting to see how things play out. So again, that is it. Yeah, that's it for turn 9, and we'll see you guys next time for turn 10. So until then, guys, as always, take care.